On this panel, please welcome Paula Rezorwich, Director of Food Safety at Maple Lodge Farms, Cameron Prince, Executive Vice President, Regulatory Affairs, Managing Directors, Cameron, Acheson Group, Raul Anandesi, Senior Manager, FSQA, Meat and Company, Boutique. And your moderator, me. So just a small, quick intro, and we'll start with you, Raul, kindly.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rahul Anandesi. I work as a Senior Manager, Food Safety and Quality Assurance at Meat & Co. Boutique. It's located right here in Etobicoke. My experience spans across seafood, ready-to-eat facilities, and I also worked in slaughter of multi-protein facilities out in Alberta. I'm new to Ontario. I just moved back in 2024. So right now we do further processing. We supply to retail and food service restaurants. Yeah, that's a bit in a nutshell.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cam Prince, and I'm Executive Vice President of the Acheson Group, which is a food safety consulting firm that is based in North America. I'm also managing director of the Acheson Group in Canada, so I focus more and more on Canada. I worked with many of you in this room. We do everything in food safety. We're not a lab, we're not an auditing team, but we do all kinds of things to help companies. My own specialty, being a former vice president of CFIA and a long career as an inspector and every job you might imagine in CFIA, I help companies in particular navigating through what can be challenging sometimes, understanding and working with CFIA. So that's my kind of specialty. Yeah, and I've been doing food safety, I shouldn't say this, but since the dinosaurs roamed the earth, I think someday. So I'm looking forward to the panel discussion, and yeah, hopefully what we can share with you will pique some interest and give you some help. Paula.
Thank you. Paula Roswich. I'm a Director of Food Safety at Maple Lodge Farms, and I lead an incredible group of people that are responsible for food safety from the moment that a live chicken enters the door all the way through to packaging and when it's being shipped to customers. And I'm also looking forward to being here.
Wow. So we had a great panel here. First question I'm going to pose to all of you. When you think about food safety in primary processing today, what is the single biggest challenge facing the industry? And we'll start with Paula. Paula, can you speak from Maple Lodge Farms' operational perspective?
Yep. So in the poultry industry, one of our biggest challenges in Canada is that we're not vertically integrated like our neighbors to the south. So in our case, we own the hatcheries, we do the catching, the transport, and we own the processing plants, but we don't have any jurisdiction at the farms where the birds are actually grown. And so at the plant level, we're actually held accountable, and the onus is on us to have food safety standards for E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter, and these are all bacteria that are found in the intestinal tract of the chicken. And so the challenge is that the onus is on us, but yet we have no control at the grower level, and really it should be a supply chain approach to solving for pathogens.
Well done. Cameron, can you discuss the industry trends at risk?
Yeah, when I saw this question, I thought, wow, there's a lot of things that you could talk about.
We didn't rehearse this, did we?
So, in thinking about this, you could talk about food safety culture. You could talk about profitability, affordability. But I think one thing that's pervasive, and it's not necessarily focused on food safety, but a lot of it is mistrust of the food industry, misinformation that's out there. Everybody's an expert. We get all kinds of opinions by influencers and other sources, and it just manifests itself as a distrust of the food industry, that they're vilified because they're adding scary things to food and all of that. And in reality, some of these things that we're using in food are really, really important. We can't do without nitrates. What's the alternative, for example? Some serious diseases. So you can cover it up and call it celery salt, but it's all the same thing. So mistrust, and do I have an answer for this? Not really. We live in a very interesting world with AI, and sometimes AI just spits out the same misinformation that is commonly being talked about. So if it's something the food industry globally, but I think in Canada needs to tackle that. What is the real story? What is the science based for some of these things that we hear about food colors, et cetera? So I think that's a big challenge.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say about misconception online. I watched a YouTube video yesterday and it blew my mind. They had a frozen piece of meat defrosting in between two pots. And that is the conception that people see and watch, thinking that that's okay. Raul, can you discuss the FSQA challenges on the ground?
I'd like to voice about food safety culture. I think the biggest challenge I see right now is about building resilient teams while managing the operational realities and economic crisis and customer and regulatory requirements. So having that engagement conversation with the employees and making them accountable and by recognition and trust, I think we can bring a strong food safety culture which will act as a path to great food safety systems by any processors.
Excellent. Oh, go question two, and I'm going to direct this to Paula. Paula, Maple Lodge Farms processes a tremendous volume of product. From your perspective, what are the most effective on-farm or early-stage practices for reducing microbial risks before products even reach the processing floor?
Good question. So we actually see this during active periods of avian influenza. There's a heightened level of biosecurity during these times, heightened biosecurity at the farms, during transport, in the processing plants. And while the intention is to minimize the spread of the avian influenza, it actually has a positive effect on other pathogens of concern. Vaccinations are excellent. There's also been a lot of research on probiotics and prebiotics and litter management, but I think the most effective would actually be to take a multi-hurdle approach and to make sure that you're using multiple strategies at the same time to be most effective.
Well done. Next question directed to Cameron. Cameron, from your work advising organizations across the industry, where do you see companies struggling most when it comes to managing risks from pathogens like Salmonella, Listeria, and or E. coli?
Yeah, and that's a very big question. And we see a lot of things in a lot of different companies. And, I could talk about environmental monitoring. The previous speakers covered that topic very, very well. On environmental monitoring, it's your number one tool other than sanitation to create a processing environment that will prevent the contamination with pathogens. So we don't, to be honest, environmental monitoring is not done well in the industry, and I'm not talking about just Canada, I'm talking about Canada and the US. It seems to be an afterthought sometimes. I think ready-to-eat plants, because of the Health Canada policy, are stronger in it in Canada than we see even in the US, but it's an area for improvement in the food industry for sure, and we go in and help companies figure out what to do with environmental monitoring, and sometimes you have to go slowly, step at a time, because sometimes the people aren't really qualified or knowledgeable enough to be able to do it right, and they need outside help. So I think in terms of pathogen control, that's a really important tool that people have to get right. Unfortunately, another one is that linking it to food safety culture is that quite often, the senior leaders of food companies, they understand food safety as an existential issue for them, but at the same time, they're accountable to investors and they're watching every penny, and they need to see the return on investment in a food safety program, and sometimes they don't always see it until there's a crisis. Crisis brings a lot of focus and fixes a lot of things despite the unfortunate consequences. So I think that's also important, that dedication to food safety culture, but food safety culture is driven by the top, and the top needs to understand that. So what can we do in this room? We need to work to find metrics, indicators, ways to validate what we're doing and show that it is super important and that avoiding a food safety crisis is absolutely critical to the survival of any company. So driving that home. And then I'll come back to one last key point, and it's kind of a no-brainer, but GMPs. I see a lot of food plants, and our company does, and there aren't many food plants that have really top-notch GMPs. Plants are getting older, infrastructure is tired, sanitary design is often a challenge. New plants are okay, but we even see in brand new plants machines that really you can't clean. So, and just the basic personal hygiene, sanitation, pest control, all of these things, they all have to be done extremely well, because you've got to remember all this other stuff we're talking about. The foundation are the GMPs, and they have to be done extremely well. So you got to figure that part out as a fundamental.
Well done. And a follow-up to that, you covered some of it. Do you see, or are there any blind spots or emerging risks that processors here may be or should be more attentive to?
Yeah, I think, just that sense of we're okay. We're okay because we got a 98 in our last BRC audit. You're not okay if you got 98 in your BRC audit. I hate to be blunt. I was a former BRC auditor, and I'm on also qualified FSSC and SQF, and those, as great as they are, and how much they've improved the food industry globally, because people have to think about this in order to sell food, and that's a good thing. But unfortunately, there are some improvements to that system that are needed. So it can have the reverse impact because people become complacent and overly confident because their GFSI rating is very good. Never rest on your laurels when it comes to that kind of stuff. An internal audit is really important. You have to take it seriously, and that is your way of knowing internally, and ultimately it's your responsibility to make sure the food is safe coming out of your facility, despite a third-party auditor finding. So that, I think, is often a blind spot.
Thank you, and that's very informative. Raul, we're going to get to you, though. We're not going to leave you high and dry here. So, as an FSQA manager, you're balancing food safety, operational realties, and regulatory expectations every single day. How do you build a food safety culture that employees truly embrace rather than simply comply with?
So I strongly believe, I've been in the industry for about almost 9 years now, and I strongly believe that food safety culture is built when employees understand the why behind their actions. When they consistently see the senior leaders modeling the right behaviors all the time, and when they're empowered with the decision-making capability, or when they're empowered to speak up when they see something that is incorrect, or without fear of taking the blame or anything as such. I think that's a fundamental start, and then having a conversation, because they're the first line of defense, because they would see the issues long before it hits any manager's desk. So when we have that open line of communication with them, and if they can come up with issues, again, that will build a great food safety culture. And I also believe that strong programs only assist in making safe food, whereas people actually are instrumental in making the safe food. So as we invest more in people, I think that will help us to make safe food and eventually protect the consumer health and also protect the business.
Well done, and it's key to focus on people, and that's what we're here for, to focus on people and give people the opportunity to feel safe.
Absolutely.
And safe, whether mentally, physically, so well done on that one. For all of you, and I'll hit on each and every one of you, how are technology and microbial testing evolving? Are there any tools, innovations that you believe will significantly improve food safety in the next 5 years? We'll hit Cameron.
Well, I mean, this has been a theme of this conference is AI. So, and I'm probably the least qualified person to talk about AI. But at the same time, I'm like everybody else. I use it, and it's a very important tool. And I was intrigued by the lady from Trace Gains and how that can be used to more effectively deliver some of the routine food safety and QA functions. And those groups, as I alluded to, are often very strapped for resources. So anything that can make it easier to evaluate or develop a specification and evaluate a product against a specification, review a COA, review a GFSI audit, and do it automatically, and then you can check that box, and as long as you have confidence in it, that's a real opportunity, because it's all about resources at the end of the day. So that's just my observation about how AI could most help the food industry, because let's face it, many of you in this room are in food safety QA positions, and you know that you could probably double the number of staff that you have and you'd still be challenged to keep up. And so anything that helps you helps food safety.
Absolutely. Raul?
With the introduction of these new softwares and technology in AI, yes, it does help in rapid pathogen detection, whole genome sequencing, and AI-assisted predictive analysis. We have quite a few softwares to help us with that. But the best value actually comes out when it supports a strong fundamental HACCP systems, effective sanitation, and good practices. Like again, it all comes down to is like, are we investing in people? Are we investing in training? Are we really focused on the fundamentals? And then we can use all these introductions in technology to help us improve better, perform better.
So there's a reoccurring theme here of AI. There's a lot of companies out there that have really mature food safety cultures and that have a lot of data. And the question is, what are you doing with that data? And so yesterday, Saba actually talked about this in her session. It's about connecting the data that you have with other data to make informed decisions and possibly using platforms to help you with that. So the example that I'll give from a poultry side is using that data for strategic scheduling of your flocks. So if you know you have a flock that's more contaminated than another flock, then you want to try to schedule that flock last on your shift to process so that you don't contaminate the lines and contaminate other flocks that are performing well.
This is one of my favorite questions. Sustainability versus safety. There is increasing pressure to reduce chemical use and improve sustainability. How do processors strike the right balance between environmental goals and maintaining the highest food safety standards? We'll start with, sure, Bro, yeah, why not?
Processors should, I fundamentally believe that processors should choose an initiative where they make the decisions based on the data. What should drive is their risk and their validation process. So if they choose a process where they can use less water, less chemical, or less energy, still have the pathogen control, then that's that's a win for both food safety and sustainability. But we have to find a balance between how we can be sustainable while achieving food safety. If there is not enough evidence to say that or to demonstrate that the food safety is not, or the pathogen control is not adequate, then I think that initiative will be flawed right from the beginning. But if we can find that balance between usage of chemicals versus providing the safe food to the consumers, that would be a win for both.
Cameron?
Yeah, I'm going to be very down to earth and practical about that one. I think we see a lot of opportunity to save energy and save money in food plants. I'm always shocked at the amount of water that's used in some food plants. It's just crazy. People get hose happy, I call it. They just spray everything. There's water, everything. No, many operations are not wet, so it doesn't apply to them. But just use of water. Also, I see a lot of ancient refrigeration systems, and I've seen some very modern refrigeration systems, and the energy efficiency difference is like, it's not like 10%, it's like, you're burning 30% of the energy that you did in the old-fashioned system. So I see that as a big priority because the food industry uses a lot of refrigeration and a lot of freezers, and just efficiency there. And then chemical usage, sanitation chemicals I'm talking about, they get overused quite often. It's just a waste, and then they go down the drain and they cause other problems. So I'm just talking about some practical day-to-day things that industry can think about that could, I'm sure if there was a little bit of effort and you drop that usage by 5%, that's a big impact when you look at the whole food industry.
So Cam mentioned it earlier, using or avoiding chemicals, it's not practical in the meat industry. And so chemicals will be necessary, but I think if you could minimize the amount of bacteria that are coming into your plant, you could reduce the amount of chemicals being used, maybe lowering concentrations. So going back to having the data, if you know you have good flocks, you can use a limited amount of chemical concentrations that still yield really good food safety results. And when you know you have a bad flock, maybe then you just increase your chemical concentration. But I would just caution that you use a data-driven approach to making those decisions when making fluctuations or changes to your chemical usage.
Well done. And in closing, a question for all three of you. If you can give this audience a 20-second piece of advice, one thing they could do tomorrow to improve food safety at the earliest stages of production, what would it be? Let's go, Cameron.
Supply chain, supply chain, supply chain. It's a neglected area. I didn't have time to mention it before. It was one of my, I think, pillars of challenges. It's a big job having a good supply chain monitoring program, and most companies need to invest more. So that's my thing, is do a better job on supply, particularly companies that are using a lot of ingredients and a lot of risky ingredients like spices and milk powders and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Paula?
For me, it's about developing relationships within those supply chains. So typically we see good relationships between sales departments and procurements with their suppliers, whether you're talking about a live chicken supplier or ingredient supplier or raw material supplier. So I would really recommend establishing a QA to QA contact with your suppliers and customers. And once you have that partnership built, I think you can address any food safety issue that arises within your supply chain.
Rahul?
My advice would be from the operations at the ground level would be is to challenge the familiarity. I think that creates and it breeds complacency where we get comfortable about something's going correct or something going right for 15 days, 20 days doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to go right all the time. So being curious, always asking questions or trying to understand the different perspectives would definitely give an edge to avoid food safety incidents.
Well done. Well, thank you, group. That was absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you. We open up the floor to some questions. Oh, none? Thank you. Perfect. Any questions? And wherever you ask, please direct the question to the person you'd like to ask the question to. You've answered every single question.
I think we're the only thing stopping them between us and
Yeah,
lunch. So.
yeah, they're all at lunch on their mind, yeah.
Well, I'm sure they will ask you throughout lunch break. Thank you again very much for the three of you, Paula, Cameron, and Rahul. Much, much appreciated.
You want to go first?
Yeah.
Yeah.